Oliveira Lawyers. Today is May the 28th, Wednesday. Time right now is 12:35 Rio de Janeiro time, and we are just getting started. Remember, as a live participant, you can suggest topics of your interest to be discussed live here in our live stream. And it looks like we already have an entry here from Joe de Souza. Welcome, Joe. Joe says, I am an American who got married in Brazil and went through the process for my residency and received my RNM card a few months ago and left Brazil in March. And Joe is planning to return in June. His question is, I don't need to get another visa or tourist visa to re-enter Brazil as an American. With me having residency in Brazil, already gone through the process, getting the residency status with my marriage visa. So pretty interesting question. And let me share a few things for the ones who don't know about the background for Joe's question. So starting on April the 10th of 2025. So we're talking about last month. The Brazilian government under Lula administration has decided or restarted to request an e-visa for citizens from the United States, Canada, and Australia to enter the country. And this has created naturally a lot of confusion for people who were traveling before to Brazil. Like US citizens could basically just buy a ticket, board an American Airlines, a flight and come to Brazil without much to think about. Right now, if you try to board American Airlines or pretty much any other airlines, they are not going to let you board unless they see clear evidence that you're going to be allowed entry to Brazil. And in accordance with the decree that started to be applied on April the 10th, you're going to need an e-visa to enter Brazil. Now, the e-visa is going to be required if you don't have like a regular visa, right? The e-visa is an electronic visa. It's not stamped on your passport. It's just printed on your side, and then you present along with your passport. There are still the traditional visas, meaning that you could basically just go to a consulate and get, a more traditional visa. And actually, for some people who are unable to secure the e-visa, the fallback plan is for you to get a regular visitor visa at the consulate. And then there are those occasions in which the US citizen is going to have residency in Brazil. And that's when the confusion gets worse because it's pretty difficult for the airlines to understand those distinctions, right? Like if you think about whenever you are boarding, you're going to be dealing with people over the counter, and they are dealing not only with Brazil, but pretty much, like every other country in the world, like particularly if you are in a major city such as New York, Dallas, Los Angeles, and so on. So what we see going on is that even if you have a residency approved, you may still have a hard time at the boarding, right? So the problem is usually not when you are entering Brazil. To enter Brazil, you don't even need the RNM card, right? Based on Brazilian law, you could pretty much enter Brazil with just the letter of approval for residency, okay? But unfortunately, the airlines, they are being fined big money, right? Like, I mean, usually the fines, they start with 10,000 reais, and then they go up like to 20, 30, 40, 50,000 reais per passenger who's not qualified to enter Brazil. So the airlines are saying, listen, stop milking money out of me, right? Like, I mean, that's not what you should be doing. So instead of paying those huge fines, the airlines are saying, you know what? Like, I mean, I need to be 100% convinced that this U.S. citizen is going to be able to enter Brazil. Otherwise, I'm going to deny board, right? So that's what's going on. Now, based on our experience so far, Joe, and that could change down the line, um, the resident card, the RNM card, it is a pretty solid evidence, even for those folks over the counter at the airport, that you are allowed to enter Brazil. Okay, so to the best of our knowledge, right, and of course we're not guaranteeing that you're going to be able to enter just because we are still in this period of accommodation, but to the best of our knowledge, you're going to be allowed board to the airplane and then enter Brazil. Because if you think about it, we're talking about two different, milestones of your trip. One is going to be the boarding, so American Airlines or Delta or whatever you're using to fly to Brazil, they need to allow you to board the airplane. That's one thing. The other thing is once you get to Brazil, you're going to be dealing with the immigration, which, by the way, you never deal directly with the actual immigration officers. You're dealing with lower level outsourced personnel, but anyhow, like they are acting on behalf of the Brazilian immigration. And whenever they see a letter, right, like stating that you have a residency approved, what they are gonna do is to call, like, a superior who's gonna come over, a supervisor type of thing, who's gonna come over, and they're gonna give you a thumbs up as long as everything is good with your residency approved, right? But again, just having a residency approved is not going to be good enough for the airlines, because the airlines want to stop the bleeding. They are being milked by the Brazilian immigration, who is fining the airlines like in the dozens of thousands of dollars, literally, right? Okay, Joe, I hope that was helpful. Ginny Lepage. Oi, Luciano, boa tarde. Boa tarde, Ginny. Good to see you over here. Didi, long time no see. Welcome to the gang, Didi. Good to see you guys over here. Let me see if we have any news to discuss. We have actually a topic like very controversial, right? This is now UOL. I think you guys can see. I hope you guys can see. Um, Not sure if you can see already or not. Let me know. Can you guys see my screen? Like I'm trying to share the UOL. All right. It looks like it's showing up now. So uh, the controversy here is about the Brazilian Supreme Court. There is like an ongoing dispute between the Brazilian Supreme Court and the right side of the political aisle in Brazil. And there is also a dispute between the Brazilian Supreme Court and US companies, particularly social media companies like Meta and other, like Twitter, TikTok, not really, because TikTok is not from the US, but like Instagram under Meta and so on. And the thing here is that the Brazilian Supreme Court, and then now this piece is going to be my opinion. They are kind of overreaching. They are overreaching by sending orders to U.S. Permanent residents who have some connection to Brazil. So let's think about an influencer who's based in the United States, but he is of a Brazilian nationality. Guess what? The Brazilian Supreme Court got to the point in which they are chasing people who are no longer living in Brazil, but just because they have a Brazilian nationality, the Brazilian Supreme Court is chasing those folks who are living as permanent legal residents in the United States, right? So this is an overreach, again, in my opinion. But I'm explaining, like, the background for this dispute. And now, uh, um, the U.S. government is like preparing potentially, sanctions against the Brazilian Supreme Court more particularly Alexandre de Moraes, which is one of the justices, and he is like always leading, like spearheading all of those actions against particularly influencers from the right side of the aisle, right? So this is the background, and this is the news. This is the headline that you can see over here, and I'm just going to translate Trump is announcing sanctions against foreign citizens. And this act could reach Moraes, which again, Moraes is one of the justices of the Brazilian Supreme Court. And listen, usually, like political discussion doesn't end well, either in a channel like ours or, a different environment. So we're not going to talk about, the right side of the aisle, the left. I just want to hear from you. What do you think? What do you think about those sanctions against, foreign citizens under the explanation that they are first violating the freedom of speech, right? And more particularly about this overreach by the Brazilian Supreme Court, like by chasing legal residents in the United States because of their Brazilian nationality. All right. So let me know your opinion. It's just like to make this live stream more dynamic. All right. Okay. So we have here. Um, all right. Let me see. We have DD requesting mother's birth certificate from São Paulo. The registry requires a little to prove correct person with same names. Requires little to prove. All right, DD. So what is the question? Like, are you asking how you could prove, or are you trying to change your name on the certificate, or to change your mother's certificate information? Just let me know exactly what you are trying to accomplish, and then I can certainly provide you some feedback on your goals. All right, DD. Jeannie said yes. Aaron, welcome back, Aaron. Aaron is saying a developer with experience in building giant walls who failed to deliver has a new Golden Dome project. In general, it is a bad idea to give money to builders who don't deliver. And absolutely, absolutely. So I entirely agree. And let's bring this question to our, context here, right, Aaron? So we do see it's very typical, right? It's very typical, in Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, or pretty much any other city. And you know what? I saw that happen in the US as well in litigation. Many times builders. They are behind in terms of payment to third parties, so they are going to get the next project no matter what. They are going to get those projects under pressure, under financial pressure. Of course, there's no pressure from the buyer, from the client, from the customer, right? But they need the money to pay the bills. Sometimes, they take money up front to pay off prior debt. Very common. So, like we have trusted contractors in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. Even when we are dealing with them, we need to monitor that. Like they are usually going to ask you for a lot of money up front. And we say, listen, there is zero reason for you to ask any money up front. In my head, I know that they're trying to pay past that from prior projects. I say, listen, there is zero reason for you to ask any money up front. Maybe I'm going to pay you, like a small fraction of the total project just as a sign of a goodwill. But you need to attach payments to milestones, right? If you just proceed as suggested by a contractor in Brazil, you are on track for disaster, right? That's pretty typical. And what's interesting to me is that I always feel this pressure, right? Like the contractor is going to ask for money up front. They're going to want you to pay this whole thing off even before they are done with the whole project, right? It's always starting to me. So a big, big, big heads up. Don't fall into that trap right? That's very typical of contractors to ask for a lot of money, then they spend the money that you're paying, and then they don't have the money to pay for the workers to come back to your site, right? So you never pay substantial money unless it is against milestones that have been met. Otherwise, no money. Okay, so that's the standard here, Aaron. Bill, welcome, Bill. Bill says, "Oi, Luciano, hit the like thumbs up button. Appreciate Bill. I appreciate every one of you who are here with us today in our live stream. Yes, hit the like button. That's going to help us as a business, and that's also going to help other people just like you who are going to benefit from this content as long as they find. Once you click like, if you subscribe, if you follow us, Google is going to understand that this content is relevant and it's going to show this content to other people as well. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, every one of you who are liking our live stream. All right. Moses is asking, does Brazilian need visa to travel to China? So I believe in Moses. Brazil and China, they were working on something out because yes, there was a need for Brazilians to get a visa to China, and vice versa. Chinese would need a visa to come to Brazil. And last time I heard, Moses, there was an effort between Brazil and China to remove the visa requirement. Pretty interesting question, Moses. ABC, what happens when US passport expired before Brazil e-visa expired? Do we need to get another e-visa or just carry old expired US passport to which e-visa is linked? E-visa is a PDF document. ABC, that's a good question. And the answer, unfortunately, is the e-visa dies with the old passport, okay? And that's one of the distinctions between, and by the way, let me remove the UOL screen. Apologies for that. Now I'm back with you. So the way it works is like this: if you have a typical traditional visa, meaning that your passport has a visa attached to it, like a Brazil visa attached to a U.S. passport, and if your US passport expires, the visa remains good. So you just do exactly what ABC said. You're going to keep the old passport with the visa, you're going to come with a new one, and you're good. That does not happen. That does not happen the same way with the e-visa. Once the passport to which the e-visa is linked is expired, guess what? The e-visa dies off. Okay, so very unfortunate. Maybe it's because of the really low threshold that Brazil is requiring for people to get the e-visa. Maybe it is for some systemic reason. Maybe it's to just get more money out of you. But the reality is, once the passport to which the e-visa is linked expires, the e-visa is going to die along with the passport, if that makes sense. Okay, so yes, expired passport, you need to apply for a new e-visa. The upside is that you can do that online. You don't need to go to the consulate. You don't need to ship your passport. So everything done electronically. The fee is also pretty low by international traveling standards. Is just $80.90. And I'm gonna ask you. Let's see if you know about Brazilian immigration. Why is the amount being charged $80.90? Any guesses? Why not $81? Why not 80? And why exactly $80.90? I can give you a tip. It has something to do with the destination of your money, but I'm going to wait for a few minutes to see if any of you know the answer, and then I'm going to share with you. All right, Didi is sharing back some information, requesting mother's birth certificate from the registry studio online. I am in the US, born here. A lot of Brazilians use the same name if it is popular, right? So let me see if I get it, Didi. Like, I mean, you're saying, well, maybe I'm going to get a birth certificate. How can they tell if this birth certificate is from my mother or not? Usually, whenever you are ordering a birth certificate, you're going to be able to provide additional information. Okay, so you could, provide the names for for your mother's parents. You could provide, for instance, the day of birth for your mother, and this way, when the registry is processing your requests, they are going to be able to not they're going to be better positioned, right? Because you never know what's going to happen at the end of the request. They're going to be better positioned to search for your mother's birth records. All right. Very interesting to note there is a huge discrepancy between quality standards and performance between registries in different states. Whenever we're talking about Registro Civil de Pessoas Naturais, which is the registry in charge of, personal records such as birth, marriage, divorce, death, and so on, the ones in Rio de Janeiro, they are the worst among the entire nation, right? Like Rio de Janeiro, like, I mean, I don't want to get into, like controversial statements, but it's very interesting to note how far behind and how much lack of goodwill we see from the registries in Rio de Janeiro. They take their licenses for granted. It is something that comes historically from like decades and decades ago, in which the granting of a registry was something attached to the person, meaning once you get it, it's yours forever, right? Nowadays, this is changing, but this type of mentality is still pretty much enforced in Rio de Janeiro, and those registries, they are just horrendous, right? I don't have any issue to say so. Usually, I try to be more, you know, uh, 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 forgiven, but like the service that they do for the population is unbelievable. Very common. Whenever people knock on our door and they say, "Listen, I'm having a really hard time to get records for this person's birth certificates." 9 times out of 10, we're talking about Rio de Janeiro, right? Because if it is an easy, a low-hanging fruit, right? If it is an easy state, a registry in which you can easily obtain the records. Many times, prospective clients, they're going to have a relative in Brazil, or they're going to be able to get by using, Chrome, a machine translation, and even get the service done remotely. But when they knock on our door, it is almost always a sign that the records are in Rio de Janeiro. And guess what? The registries in Rio de Janeiro, they are not going to share the records. You need to pay a fee for them to say if they have the records or not, right? And there are, if I'm not mistaken, 16 different registries in the city of Rio de Janeiro, and you pretty much need to pay the fee to every one of them because they don't allow you to search ahead of time if they have the records or not. And that's not the only problem. The other major problem is that whenever they handle a search, at least it looks like to us, right? We don't know if that's the case or not, that they don't usually do a good job in terms of searching for records. So nowadays, we are even refusing search in the city of Rio de Janeiro because if the person comes to us and say, listen, we're going to need to send the people to 16 different registries, pay fees, right, and spend a ton of money. So I don't know, like we're going to charge you $1,000 just to find your birth certificate. We don't take your money and we don't take your assignment. And the reason for that is because there is still a large chance that the registries are not going to find your registry. And guess what? You're going to get mad at us, right? Like, I mean, you paid $1,000 and at the end of this journey, you don't get anything. You got to be mad with someone. And I guess it's easier to be mad at us than to be mad at the registry. So therefore, nowadays, if you knock on our door just saying I need the like birth records from Rio de Janeiro, we say, listen, unfortunately, we cannot help you. Okay, so just like some information because of this question. All right, the okay. Let's take a look at the answers. Aaron saying reciprocity. That's a good guess. Christopher, 80 to the government, the balance to the processor. Exactly. Christopher nailed it. It's exactly the case. So this is also very interesting information, right? $80.90. So $80 goes to the Brazilian government and 90 cents goes to VFS, which is a third party hired to process the visa. I think it's pretty amusing that someone would deal with the Brazilian government, right? And immigration matters, which are, very often, convoluted and prone to issues with, the immigrants, right? Like the immigrants, whenever they are facing like some difficulty in terms of getting an e-visa, guess what? It's they're gonna, blame the processor, and the processor needs to endure all this aggravation for 90 cents of dollar. But that's exactly the right answer, Christopher. Thank you for chiming in. Thank you, Aaron. And reciprocity is another component for sure of the visa. And that's Lula's explanation. Well, if Brazilians need a visa to travel to the US, guess what? We're going to ask US citizens to present a visa when entering Brazil. Of course, like, I mean, the situation is not nearly, the same because, we have a huge number of of Brazilians who travel to the US under the disguise of a vacation and never leave the country. There are also US citizens who come to Brazil and kind of overstay or stay illegally, but I would say the numbers are naturally not comparable, right? So, Lula's approach to reciprocity, to my opinion, don't make much sense, all right? But that's a personal opinion. I know even US citizens who say, listen, I am 100% on Lula's side. I think there should be reciprocity. But again, it's a personal opinion, right? In my opinion, if US citizens are bringing a ton of money, not only from my perspective, like, as someone who's benefiting from the money who's coming from the US, but also as a Brazilian citizen, I want, people from the US to come to Brazil very easily as long as they don't have, like a criminal records, as long as they are not coming here to do bad stuff, like, sexual tourism, this kind of stuff. I think we should make it very easy for US citizens to come to Brazil, pretty much because they are, spending a ton of money. They are most of the time pretty reasonable in their behavior. So I don't think we should enforce reciprocity. But very good point, Aaron. Ahmed, welcome back. Hello, Mr. Oliveira. I'm looking into moving to Brazil and buying property in for rental income and want to ensure I'm legally protected, given the lengthy real estate law and possible disputes. All right. One contract clauses can help safeguard against such challenges. Also, would hiring a property management company help mitigate these risks? Ahmed, so whenever we are revising or creating a contract, we're going to have probably about seven different clauses that we're going to pay attention to or that we're going to address in a contract. Of course, I am unable to discuss all of them over here, but just a couple maybe to illustrate. One is going to be regarding the timeline. In Brazil, in general, nowadays, transactions could occur as quickly as in 15 days, particularly for pressure from the realtor, right? Realtors, they are always pushing for the transaction to go to SAP so they can receive their commission. It is just natural. But the point is, whenever you're buying as a foreign citizen, there are many specific requirements that are not in place for Brazilian citizens, and the realtor doesn't know about it. Even if you're hiring a Brazilian attorney, if they do not specialize in transactions with foreign citizens, guess what? Many times they don't know about it, right? Very common for a client to come to us saying, well, I have a Brazilian attorney already, but my Brazilian attorney is just helping me in this particular point, and now I need someone with your experience to assist with the international or the cross-border aspects of the transaction. So the first clause here, Ahmed, that we're talking about is the timeline, right? Usually we provision no less than 60 days between signing the contract and closing. So we have enough time for those things that need to happen. Otherwise, if you set up just 30 days, and if you are unable to produce the paperwork for a closing, guess what, Ahmed? Like the Brazilian seller could maybe hit you with penalties that could start at 10% of the property amount and more, because many times they are going to say and damages, right? So 10% is just like the baseline, and then if there are damages, you're going to need to pay that on top of the 10%. So pretty bad for you to arrive at the end of this timeline without being able to perform, right, Ahmed? So that's why we usually a provision 60 days between signing the contract and closing. For more complex situations, we're going to actually allocate 90 days. Okay? So that's one of the clauses. The other one is regarding sending money to Brazil. Many people, they don't know that you basically cannot send the money to Brazil through a wire transfer and having this money showing up on the other side. That doesn't happen, all right? And 9 times out of 10, the money is going to be caught. Is going to be caught by the receiving bank's compliance, who's going to be in charge of collecting a bunch of documents about the property acquisition. And then after running a full compliance process, that's when they could potentially approve the release of the money. Okay, so another concern is like if you sign a contract saying that you're going to pay the seller a down payment with 24 hours after signing the contract, unless this money is small enough for you to send out money to Wise, you're gonna be in a bad place, because uh, money is never gonna arrive to the seller in a business day again, unless we're talking about a small sum, right? So there you go. These are two clauses, Ahmed, that we work on whenever we are representing a client in a real estate transaction in Brazil. Okay. Now, worth to mention, just a contract alone is never enough to have you in a safe position. There are many steps that we're going to take in order to increase the chances of a successful acquisition without headaches, right? We're going to pretty much do like a very in-depth due diligence, not only on the property naturally, but also on the sellers, right? So that's where we spend literally dozens and dozens of hours to make sure that there are no things that you are not seeing that could impact the transaction even after the closing. Joseph, hola, bom dia, Joseph. I'm going to apply for the digital nomad visa soon. If I upload the criminal record check certificate from Germany with an apostille, will they ask for a paper copy later? Joseph, most of the time they will not, okay, but I want to share a distinction. The standards that they are going to apply to our applications who come with a letter of representation by a Brazilian law firm are many times different from the standard that they are going to apply to self-represented applicants, right? So I can tell you in terms of our experience. So for our clients, I would say 9 times out of 10, they are not going to ask you. They are not going to ask you for like an authentic background check with the apostille, all right? Actually, whenever you are applying with us, right, for the digital nomad visa, I'm not talking about other types of visas or residencies, right? I'm talking about the digital nomads. And actually, I'm talking about the digital nomad residency, meaning that you are applying in Brazil not at the consulate. When you apply in Brazil, through us for the digital nomad, first thing you don't need like the apostille or apostille, right? You pick the pronunciation you like the most. That's the first thing you don't need it. So 9 times out of 10, we just provide the background check and no apostille. Second thing, if you apply through us, they are not going to ask for the authentic version of such background check. All right, Joseph. So that's our experience. The James Allen, if I overstayed my tourist visa, I already did the extension, which means I've been here past the 180 days. Can I get a digital nomad visa, or is there another visa I can get to get residency here? James, typically, right? Typically, because there are other factors they are going to take into consideration, but typically, an overstay is not going to be a bar, is not going to be enough to preclude you from applying to the digital nomad residency or something else as long as you pay the fine, right? So if you just sit back and say, well, too bad there is a fine, I'm just going to pursue a residency, they are not going to approve your residency, right? So usually what we do is like we file an application for residency on behalf of our clients. And as soon as we file, we give the paperwork to our clients for them to go to the police federal and say, listen, I have an application in course. I want to, check whatever I have in terms of fines and pay off the fines. And then the Brazilian Federal Police, whenever they see that the immigrant is taking steps to regularize their situation, they are going to be amenable to allow you to pay the fines, right? And why do I say that? Are they refusing to receive their fine payments? Yes, yes, that's working. That's actually happening, particularly in busy cities, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, Florianopolis. And the reason why they are refusing to allow you to pay the fine is because many people are trying to game the system. Because whenever you pay the fine, you actually get 60 days to remain in Brazil. So let's say you've been in Brazil for 190 days, right? You overstayed. So many people, right, like the smart folks, they are going to go to police bureau and say, you know what? I stayed here, too bad, for 10 days. Now I want to pay the fine. What they're trying to accomplish here, they are trying not only naturally to get it back on track, but they're trying to get an additional 6 days out of nothing, right? And the Polícia Federal says, listen, if I allow, uh, gringos to do that, I'm going to have a huge line of people here every single day to basically game the system, right? Because 10 days, the fine is not going to be meaningful. And by just paying the fine, you're going to be able to get an additional 60 days. So because of people gaming the system, you go over there and you know what they're going to tell you? They're going to tell you most of the time, we're not going to charge you the fine now. You're going to pay the fine on the day that you are leaving, right? Because when they do so, they condition the payment of the fine with you leaving the country. And at that time, you're going to be showing your, boarding pass showing that you are leaving Brazil. And in this case, yes, they are going to make it easy for you to pay the fine. All right. So very interesting development. Like I had a conversation with a colleague of mine who works for the Brazilian Federal Police in the Galeão Airport, not the Santos Dumont. In Rio de Janeiro City, there are two major airports. Right, one is Santos Dumont, which is in downtown. And then there is another one, which is Galeão, which is the actual international airport in Rio de Janeiro City. So this colleague of mine, he worked over there with just immigration, and he didn't know about this practice. Like, I mean, Brazil immigration is huge, and said, well, they should accept, but I could tell he doesn't know that this is pretty much a reality in pretty much any Brazilian federal police. They make it hard for you to pay the fine when they realize you're just trying to get an additional 60 days. Okay, TD, I appreciate your candor. Thank you. I will inquiry of your service. Absolutely, Didi. That's what we are here for, to give you, a clear and unbiased feedback. ABC, from where can I get an e-visa? So e-visa is affixed inside the US passport. Do I need to physically go there or can it be done by mail? ABC. So in theory, you would apply directly with the consulate, right? The question that you may have, which I would be unable to answer, is whether they are going to allow you to apply in person because in the Brazilian government workflow, the way they see this process happening is like this: you're gonna apply for the e-visa, and if for some reason the VFS, which is the private processor of the visa application, if they are unable to get the information they need, or if you fall into some type of exception, in this case, they are going to tell you to go to the consulate, right? And by going to the consulate, I don't mean physically. Some consulates may ask you to go in person. Other consulates, they may allow you to apply through mail, right? But if I had it to guess, ABC, I don't think this is going to be an option. Like, well, if you like, you do e-visa. If you don't like, you go to the traditional. I think it would be pretty much something that's going to be enforced, right? Like you need to go through the e-visa first. All right, ABC. Let me see what else we have. Mhm. Joseph, I am in Fortaleza now with a tourist visa. Glad to hear, Joseph. That's great. I love Fortaleza. It has been probably a couple of months since last time I went to Fortaleza. All right. And such a great city. I love Mucuripe. I was actually discussing with some relatives of mine about Mucuripe. Like they are actually from Manaus, and I was talking about the Mucuripe market in which you can buy like seafood. In my case, all I eat is fish. Okay, I don't eat like shellfish, but just like regular fish. And once you buy fish, they are gonna cook on the spot. So it's amazing. You are buying fish that was just caught that particular morning, right? And they are gonna cook on the spot. Like it doesn't get fresher than that. It's truly an amazing experience. And you're gonna be able, of course, to buy, you know, side dishes. You're gonna be able to buy rice, beans, fries or salads or whatever you want to add. And everything is so fresh, right? And you can eat your food if you like. As Brazilians with, beer, like very typical for Brazilians to eat food with beer and or any other, like, soda, water, or cocktail. So pretty amazing city. Dolphy Lamar. Dolphy, do you have a contact phone number where we can reach you? Dolphy, we usually don't how can I say, like we try to optimize our intaking, right? So ideally you would send us an email so we can review what you need. You don't need to write like a long letter, maybe just write a couple of paragraphs with your need, and that's how we're gonna check first if we are able to assist you. If we are able to assist you, we can potentially provide you with an estimate of services or recommend a paid consultation to better understand your needs. All right, Dolph, that's how we work. We usually don't like phone calls because many people, and of course I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking in general. Many people, they try to call and they expect like an attorney to be taking the call and answering questions that they have out of the blue, right? That's not how it should work. Attorneys are going to come in only later after you either retained our services or you are paying for a consultation. All right, Dolphy, but we do our best again to provide with an estimate of service fees so you can also check if we are the right match for your needs. I hope that makes sense. ABC, I asked the Brazil consulate, they replied, your visa is valid for 10 years. We advise you to carry both the expired passport and the new one to avoid confusion. So is that what they said about the e-visa ABC? That's interesting because that's not what we saw in the regulations for the e-visa. So I'm wondering if that's just bad advisory or if maybe they have changed the rules. Let me see here if we have the regulation for the e-visa. Let me see if I can pull that up. All right. Country issues, gradual, visas denied. Exactly. So it looks like they changed the information, ABC. Now I see here it's actually on VFS. They're saying that it's going to remain good. So this is good news, I guess. Good news for the U.S. Nationals, Canadians, and Australians, right? It looks like I would still wait for someone to say that this worked fine, right? Because this information that we just saw as an update is on VFS website, and VFS is the private party handling the visa application. But I think that in order for them to update from the prior understanding to this new one, it should be something coming from the Brazilian government. So I would say ABC 90% chance that this is actually the case. If you happen to travel with your new passport and the expired one plus the PDF for the e-visa, please do us a favor, come back over here and share, because then we're going to assess as 100% of this information being correct. The James Allen, thank you for answering. I've been here for an extra 5 months so far. Is there a way in which I can get temporary residency or permanent residency? We're going to State of Union, but things changed. Yeah, so James, like there is no like temporary residency or extension that you're gonna have. You need to be within one of the scenarios for which there is a matching residency, right, James? So in your case, if you qualify for the digital nomad is always a low-hanging fruit that you can, pursue as long as, of course, you do meet the requirements. Uh, the process we handle here at the firm, we first file for your digital nomad. Once we have all the paperwork, that's when we recommend you to go and pay the fine, right? Because whenever they are reviewing your application, if they see that you are first illegally in the country, second, that you haven't paid any fines, guess what? They are not going to approve your digital nomad application. Now, if you file first and then you take the paperwork to the Brazilian Federal Police, in this case, they're going to say, all right, like I see here that James has filed for the digital nomad and he wants to be on our good side again, and therefore he wants to pay the fine. Let's allow James to pay the fine. You pay the fine. When it comes to the time for them to review the application, they are going to see that you are compliant again with Brazilian regulations. If that makes sense, James, I don't need to tell you, recommended, a consultation to know all the specifics of your case and for representation for you to get what you're trying to get, right? Moaz team, hello, Moaz. Can you shed any light briefly on the Brazil Viper visa process, path to PR and citizenship and the timeline? Right. So by Viper, Moaz, there are a couple of interpretations. You could have like Viper. Usually people think about something that you're going to apply and you're going to get permanent residency in Brazil, right? Uh, and so, whenever we're talking about visas, there is no visas that you can receive abroad, right? Meaning at a consulate level and have a permanent residency in Brazil, right? So by Viper, many times people also mean like the golden visa. And whenever you're talking about the golden visa, there are two paths. There is the path for investment in a company or investment in real estate. Here at the firm, we don't handle, residencies for investments in a company just because we think it's a pretty bad idea for a foreign citizen to attach their immigration journey to a business in Brazil. Business in Brazil are plagued by many challenges related to regulation, excessive bureaucracy, archaic labor obligations, and so on, right? On the real estate side, once you buy a property, you are going to get 4 years of temporary residency. And before the 4 years expire, then you have an opportunity to renew as a permanent residency. All right. So 4 years as a temporary residency. After that, you apply, you get potentially a permanent residency. And then with an additional 4 years under the permanent residency, you can then apply for the Brazilian citizenship. And there you go. There was a quick overview to this path. All right. Dolphy is sharing. Good afternoon. I'm located in with guess New York, maybe, and my husband, who is Canadian, myself, who are citizen, and his brother, Haitian. Citizen are planning to move to Brazil. My husband and I plan to come around August. Good to know, Dolphy. All right, yeah. So you're doing your homework, right, Dolphy? You are trying to understand, that the Brazilian immigration for Haitians is pretty difficult to obtain. So I don't know, maybe his brother who's Haitian has already some type of visa. Brazil is denying visas to Asian people right and left. There is an available track for people from Haiti, and this track is usually through the existence of a close relative already in Brazil. So if you have someone like a brother, a mother, a father, like a sibling, you can potentially apply under that track, right? But if you go to the consulate and try to get a visa, good luck. Like they are denying right and left just because pretty much every single person wants to leave Haiti, I guess, right? Not sure if it's political correct to say that, but that's the image that the Brazilian immigration has in their heads. They say, listen, we need to stop people coming like from all over the world. They kind of what is happening to the United States, right? Like, I mean, you have like goodwill toward immigrants. You have like a framework. You want to receive as many people as possible, but there is a limit to how much you can do. You can't just have open borders, otherwise, your country is going to eventually stop working, right? So there should be a balance. Brazil is super generous in terms of asylum or refugees. Like Brazil is like recognized internationally for being really willing to receive people. But even Brazil has a limit, right? Like, I mean, we have a certain economic size, we have our own challenges, and we want to accommodate not dozens of thousands of people. We actually want to accommodate hundreds of thousands of people, but guess what? It cannot be millions of people. Like there is just not enough infrastructure to receive every single person who wanna come to Brazil. Right? That's the point. In my opinion, if you allow me to share. Patrick Bage, I'm married to a Brazilian and applying for my family visa soon. If I do this with the UK consulate, I understand I must then go to the Polícia Federal in Brazil to get the ID and make it the visa permanent. Patrick, just maybe, like some different choices of words. You get a family visa, family reunification visa at the consulate level. This is usually limited to 1 year. Okay, so once you get this thing for 1 year, you need to apply for the residency in Brazil. So the visa just gets you in Brazil for 1 year, right? So it's like separate from the residency process. that you're going to need to apply in Brazil. Usually it goes beyond just a visit to the Polícia Federal to get your residency, right? Some of the requirements from the consulate may be different from the requirements from the Polícia Federal. Additional paperwork is going to apply, additional requirements are going to apply for the permanent residency. So it's, I would say, more complex than that. But the idea, yes, it could be for you to get the visa through the consulate and later on apply for the permanent residency while you in Brazil. All right, we're gonna probably take a final one. We are already at 1:30, 1:30 mark here in our live stream. I'm gonna take like a final participation. And just a heads up, as informed before, we're not gonna have a live stream this Sunday, but we do have a live stream next Wednesday. All right. And then after this next Wednesday, we're probably going to restart our Sunday live streams as well. Okay. So no live stream on Sunday. Yes, live stream next Wednesday, 7 days from today. All right. And last one is going to be from Captain Morgan. Captain Morgan says, can I get a digital nomad visa by having rental income from the United States, or do I have to work remote online? Captain Morgan, income is never enough for the digital nomads. Many people do ask like this question. So you are in good company. People say, well, I have, like $20,000 in my bank account, which is more than the minimum 18,000. In case I'm not going to show the 1,500 a month, does it mean I don't need any work at all? And unfortunately, that's not the interpretation. The interpretation is that you need both the financials and also the remote work. All right, Captain Warrior. But we do have some strategies to help you out in this journey. If that's your situation, schedule a consultation and we can discuss some strategies that I would guess are 90% probable of allowing you to file for the digital nomad. All right. So that's it for today. I want to say thank you very much for your participation. Very interesting, very interesting participations, very interesting topics that we discussed. As usual, I thank you for your participation. If you also like our stream, and if you follow us, that's an additional thank you for that. And I hope you guys have a blessed rest of your day, and we're gonna see each other next Wednesday.